episodes just talking about those kind of challenges that consumers have on the way through to having the installations and the great work that Cinergi offers. Wanted to talk to you a little bit around that journey that customers go on, considering that you can supply the full technology to go into the home, and there might be occasions where maybe customers take the technologies at various different stages. And we touched on a little bit the issues around kind of integration of controls into a single household. When you're fitting solar and battery systems, what kind of manufacturers are usually fitting in that world?
So in terms of solar, I mean, there's just so many options in there. So we try and keep it simple. Different manufacturers do different things better. So I'd say most systems we do solar-wise are SolarEdge.
Okay.
With a bit of Solace and some Enphase, depending on the application, depending on sort of installation constraints really. Battery-wise, again, depending which PV system you then go for. Most of our installations are Tesla Powerwalls at the minute, along with some Pylon Techs and a few SolarEdge ones sort of tied in there. So a bit of a mix, but yeah, I'd say if you had to pick two main ones, it'd be SolarEdge and the Tesla Powerwall are probably our most common.
And then on the heat pump side of things, obviously another big electrical consuming item in the journey. What do you tend to fit there?
I'd say probably 80% of what we do is Valent at the minute.
Really?
Yeah, with the remaining 20% being some large capacity stuff like the big Hitachi units or Aristons and that sort of thing.
Because the controls and the communication aspect around a lot of this stuff, it's a big one for Hetio. We commercially, that's what we're developing, is a home energy management system that integrates kind of the different manufacturers and essentially one system that has the AI and the machine learning capability, so we understand how the home performs and how the homeowners use it, and then we start to learn how the technology is performing in isolation, but try and bring it all together to optimize it all in one place. And it is one of the challenges is that there's so many manufacturers on the market, actually integrating with them all and having one platform that kind of works seamlessly amongst them. But how do you see that when you're doing installations at the moment? If you do go for a home that is using kind of solar and battery on one side, and then you've got a heat pump operating over here, does it tend to just fit on the homeowner, or sit on the homeowner's job to make that all kind of talk to each other, or?
Sort of. I suppose in a minute where there isn't really that sort of cross-platform control system, really, like you're talking about Hetio doing. They're almost two separate systems in most occasions. Some manufacturers do have the facility to integrate PV into their system, like Ariston do, Dakin do, in terms of picking up that excess solar PV and then putting it in. And then on the flip side to that, you've got the other manufacturers, like MyEnergy, SolarEdge, Tesla now, who will oversee that side in terms of your solar, your batteries, your EVs, your immersion diverters. But there isn't much, to be honest, that links the two at the moment.
Feels like such a big challenge because it, to harmonize that system as a whole. And we did an installation quite recently where we've got a wall box EV charger, we've got a Give Energy battery, and we've got the Samsung heat pump.
Yep.
And so we've connected all that technology, and first of all we monitored the home for 12 months before we put anything in, monitored the smart meter data, and we monitored the temperatures inside the home, and then we monitored arranged the installation of all the technology to go in, and then we've integrated with each of those technologies into the Hetio platform.
Yeah.
And what we've been doing since then is running an algorithm that sits behind that aims to predict how that home's going to perform the next day on a half-hourly basis, based on the historical performance data from the every day that feeds into the algorithm. And it's really interesting that actually you start to see typical kind of consumer patterns, how people use their home in a particular day, may change day by day on the basis that some days they might work from home, some days they don't. But the certain aspects that you really start to see are kind of embedded in, like hot water usage. It becomes, people kind of have a routine of, showering in the day, showering at night, or bath time for kids or whatever. So their hot water profile tends to be quite something you can predict. And then when you start saying, well, do we heat that from the heat pump? Do we heat it from the solar? Do we use off-peak electricity via an immersion into the hot water to do that? And then you start looking at things like, right, the weather, how's the weather going to be tomorrow? What what does that mean in terms of how hard the heat pump's going to have to work? When should we be turning that heat pump on? And whether or not the decision maybe changes a little bit if we say, well, the model says we should turn it on at 5 a.m. because they want it warm for 6 a.m. And actually you say, well, actually, if we turn it on at 4:30 rather than 5, we're going to take advantage of some of the cheaper off-peak electricity periods. So there's so many factors that go into monitoring all that in a home, and to a point, taking that out of the homeowners, taking that headache away from somebody having to make all those things work. But it's interesting when you have those two manufacturer sets, because the heating manufacturers, the Samsungs, the Mitsubishis, the Valents, and then you have these kind of battery manufacturers that tend to be a completely different sector altogether.
And they're not talking cross-platform like that.
It just seems so important when actually we go back to one of your earlier points around the financial. One of the drivers behind people making some of these changes, if it is a financial investment because of the cost of having these things installed, having two systems that operate completely independently from each other and can on occasion even fight against each other. And then you have the next factor where it's the load on the grid is such an important part to making these things all balance. Actually having something that monitors the power consumption, monitors the needs of the home, and actually optimizes all this together. It's a big challenge. It's something we've been working a lot for quite a few years to try.
It's
and
interesting,
get this right.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, I've got a very good friend of mine. He's a pilot, and he'll probably watch this and find out what we're up to. But he's very technical, and he lives in Lincolnshire, and we don't normally cover that area. But we put solar edge on his roof in terms of solar. We put a Solis battery charger and Pylon Tech batteries in. I think it's got 1 or 2, so about call it 9 kilowatt hours worth of batteries, and then a Valent Aerotherm split heat pump. And he's very into his home tech and things like that, and he's programmed it all on Home Assistant. So what his system will do is it will learn his historic energy data, it will forecast that for tomorrow, as well as solar and temperature. He's then on Octopus Agile, so every evening at 5 o'clock it downloads the tariffs, it selects the worst half an hour, best half an hour, worst hour, best hour for the tomorrow, and then profiles what to do. So profiles his battery charging, battery discharging, his heat pump heating up, his hot water. It brings his dishwasher on, because it's all integrated with Nest or whichever one it is. But I won't state exactly figures, but I can't remember exactly what pence per kilowatt he averages now, but it's drastic. And he does that with a relatively small battery. I've sort of done different on my one in that I've got similar system, so heat pump, solar edge, and Pylon Tech batteries, because I went for quite a big store, so I've got about 30 kilowatt hours on mine.
Wow. Okay.
So because we've got electric vehicles, so we're on cheap night rate, 11:30 to 5:30. So we're 7 pence in that period and 28 or whatever it is in the day. So during January, our average pence per kilowatt was 12 pence per kilowatt, heating wise, purely because during that 6 hours of off peak, go hard basically. So heat the house, heat the hot water, charge the batteries, charge the cars.
Are you putting an export tariff on that as well?
We did. No export tariff. No, because I don't think you can couple the two together, unfortunately. Oh, okay. But that far outweighs any excess we get in the summer, really. Particularly, my wife's at home most of the time with the kids. She's got an electric car, so her car stays plugged in. So we use the Eddy and the Zappy then to mop up the rest of the power during the summer. So, it's amazing what you can do. And you've got 2 schools. He's making his battery work very hard, by doing some quite smart stuff. I suppose I've spent a bit more money and got a bigger battery, but it does more dumb stuff, if that makes sense. Yeah. But, it's amazing what difference you can make in terms of this.
Plays such a big part in the consideration for when, and I think we're massively lacking, serious amounts of data around the actual performance of these combined systems. And there's so many, new tariffs coming onto the market that I think will really start to enable this. But that we use terms like the blended unit rate of electricity when you consider how much you've consumed from generated and how much you've consumed from the grid and off-peak tariff periods and on-peak tariff high-peak periods. When you actually combine it all together, what you're saying is that your energy bill is lower than it was.
Drastically. Drastically.
And that's the thing when you get to the homeowners is that because this calculation that gets done by engineers talking about heat pump systems and saying, well, a heat pump needs to be 400% efficient for you to warrant that extra cost you're putting in when you have a when you have a in comparison to the running cost of a gas boiler.
Yeah.
But actually, when you take all of those factors into account and you invest it in that way, and you put solar and battery and off-peak periods and tariffs, that rate of saying, well, gas is 3 times cheaper than electric, therefore you have to be at least 3 times more efficient. There starts to become a bit of an argument around that.
Definitely.
If your running costs, your pence per kilowatt hour is there or thereabouts with a pence of with the cost of gas.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that's where you can really unlock big savings when it comes to, well, if you're talking about being relatively quits in terms of running costs, let's say gas is 9 pence and a heat pump, electricity is at 28 pence for argument's sake. If you're roughly quits there, which most some seem to be, if you can, like I said, we got our electricity cost down to about 12 pence a kilowatt, less than half the cost at that point.
Yeah,
which is quite drastic.
Especially, but I would imagine because on its own in isolation, that figure of say 12 pence against the kilowatt hour of gas would be in 10 pence. But the key factor in that is that your heat pump will be performing 300% efficient in comparison to a gas boiler that would have been 95, 98% efficient. So you're actually not only is your blended rate pretty similar, but the amount you're consuming is dramatically less. And that's where the big saving point
100%.
comes in.
Yeah.
It does take a challenge around capital cost, and depending on the audience, you have people that are, say maybe more in a position where they can afford that. I think one of the challenges and one of the things that we're working on under our Energy as a Service program is to say, well, actually, if we take all that capital cost away, and that's not about removing the making everybody do the work for cheap. It's saying whatever you would have quoted to do that job.
Yeah.
If we provide a 20-year funding package that essentially says the capital cost gets removed from the customer. Yeah. We pay you to do the work that you would normally do in that home, but instead the customer then pays a £100 a month as a fee, essentially associated to that technology. That sounds a lot because you're kind of going, well, I'm entering into a 20-year agreement or a 25-year agreement. Because the house is, and for as long as there is an energy supply at that house, somebody will be paying an energy bill. Definitely. And all we're saying is rather than paying that energy bill to whichever energy supplier you choose, you essentially commit to paying a significant part of your energy bill for the next 20 years to a sole provider that has essentially decarbonised this home. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Hopefully, it removes that capital cost barrier, and this starts. We go live with this on the 18th of this month with some local trials in the Northwest. We're doing it in partnership with E.ON. But the aim is to take this nationally, so that for installers like yourselves, nothing changes from your perspective. You can still quote it as you normally would. You design it as you normally would. Specification is within the same remits. We'd probably say this manufacturer range, but it wouldn't be about stipulating a specific one. But the aim is to remove that capital cost completely, and then hopefully it is more around. We know once that technology is all in and you get it all together, that actually the blended running costs should become a lot easier. Yeah. Well, it's an interesting topic, isn't it? Because especially if you can do that and demonstrate, you're going to get X kit, you're going to be green, you're going to be doing this, and it's going to, I don't know if it will, but in terms of saving you money, it's going to save you X. We can demonstrate your monthly savings because of here's all the data, this is what you're paying. Yeah. It's why wouldn't you do it at that point? Especially if you can end up in a position where you can compare it to the house next door. That's the point we were trying to get to is. There's enough of these installations in that actually you can show this compared to the house next door, and you can see that it's that they have received the running cost. The house isn't cold in the depths of winter. Yeah. You're still going to have the early adopters that you've got to take on that journey, but hopefully for installers like yourself, this the more the financial barriers around installations can be removed, the more this becomes more of a mass market product. Definitely. The expansion there for Cinergi as you grow. Yeah, that's the idea. But because like you say there isn't, the battery system on my house. I suppose if we were to install it on someone else's, it's probably £10,000-11,000 in terms of batteries, which is a lot of money. I mean, I don't know any of my friends who would go and spend 10-11 grand on batteries right now, to be honest with you. But
if you can remove that, it's just another one of those barriers, isn't it? And there's quite a few barriers at the minute. If you can remove that one, then that's massive, isn't it?
And time wise, what if somebody rang you up today and they wanted an installation, what would they? Yeah. What would be the lead time before? Because I'm assuming you've got an order book and things like that. What?
Touch wood.
Yeah. What would it? You're not sat there waiting for work. I assume.
No,
no. Is that another barrier in the industry? The actually availability of contractors that can come in and take that whole connected approach, because there is people who are just accredited for heat pump systems. There's people who are just accredited for solar systems. Yeah. The availability of companies like yourself who can actually come in and do that combined approach. Yeah. I'm assuming you're busy.
Yeah. We are. Yeah. No, thankfully. So, lead time wise, we normally sort of float around the sort of 2 to 3 month mark in terms of getting a date in the diary. Which works for us. It's quite a nice buffer. It's quite a nice, if you're working week to week, I can imagine that gets quite stressful as a business owner. That's not very nice. Similarly to the customer, I mean, as a consumer, I suppose I always look at that. If I'm getting someone in, we had some work done at our house, and we had a plasterer came in, and he's in it. We said, when can you be here? He said, next Tuesday. Ooh. And I said, Like,
why are you not busy?
We're not using him. Like, we'll wait 2 months for the one for the other guy, because I'd rather there's a reason why he's busy. So I think both sides, business owner and consumer wise, I think there's a nice thing to have a bit of, I think personally, have a bit of a lead time there.
It means you're waiting.
I think it says a lot. Yeah.
And it does create challenges in the kind of distress purchase. My boiler's broken down. What do I do next?
Yeah.
World, but. I think having organizations like yourself, because this does, to me, the two are directly connected between the controls and integration of multiple technologies in the home, and the installers who are capable of installing multiple technologies in the home. Because you say you've got your friend there who's gone down the home assist route, yourself who have gone big on the battery storage, in order to essentially alleviate yourself the complexity of having to do controls integrations. Yeah, and there probably will be somewhere in the middle of those two where it will land.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
But I think the willingness of manufacturers to offer that kind of levels of integration is going to be crucial, because there's also lots of systems that are already out there in the market now that actually learning how those systems work and bringing them together, and not having to go to a home and go, actually, you need to rip all this out and bring it all together. Yeah. But I don't think we will see a lot of heat pump manufacturers moving into the battery space, and there does seem to be some of the battery manufacturers that are moving into the heat pump space, but it may be more as an add-on sell rather than they've actually got
product type thing. Yeah. And then you've got the added complexity of people like Valent, for example, use bus as their sort of communications protocol. Other heat pumps don't do that, and I know there are systems out there that like Homely, for example, who have sort of overcome some of those barriers in terms of heat pump control wise. But again, if you want to enhance heat pumps sort of efficiency in running, we tend to try and keep with their own control system. So let's say we're using a Valent heat pump now with a Senso Comfort thermostat. I suppose as a third party control device, then linking that to a battery system, you want to try and avoid just switching that signal on and off, don't you? Then how do you integrate talking to Valent in bus and talking to this? And
it's a challenge, because actually you end up embedding more hardware onto the site. We've done some trials recently over using a kind of software connection into the systems over API. Yeah. And we've done some where we've actually put hardwired connections in, but actually you end up with some of them on Modbus, some of them are on MBus, and each one's then Modbus parameters are different. So actually, the integration time between technologies is pretty challenging. But as you say, what manufacturers want, and to be honest, what we've actually found works quite well, is allowing the manufacturers' controllers to operate in the way they want to, but feeding enough data in for that controller to be able to make informed decisions.
Right. Okay.
And trying to steer away from using things like third-party thermostats as much as possible, because the manufacturers' controls work really well with their technology. It's just 9 times out of 10, the technology is not getting enough information from the rest of the system to be able to make an informed decision. Yeah, it's kind of going, I know what I'm doing with my heat pump, so I'm going to work that in the right way and try and protect the heat pump technology in a lot of cases. Yeah, definitely. Interesting stuff. Yeah, I think it's a massive journey to go on, but it was interesting to get your insight on some of that. How it's, especially when you're in a position where you can specify that whole system for the home, that doesn't feel like there's a manufacturer out there that really owns that whole home space at the moment.
There isn't at the minute. I can't think of a manufacturer who does, heat pump. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Hopefully, maybe there is one. Heat pump, EV charger, immersion diverter, solar, batteries. No, I don't think there is anyone who does the whole thing.
There seems to be a few that are kind of making moves towards it.
Yeah.
But maybe My Energy and Give Energy, I think, are the ones that if anybody's going to do it, they're the ones that are most likely to bring it to market quicker. But then the bigger scale ones, the likes of your Samsungs, Mitsubishis and what have you, then it probably doesn't fit into their kind of core product range, or maybe it's in Europe and we're waiting for it to come to the UK. But yeah, a whole home approach seems to make sense. It's just, it kind of seems to fall outside of individual technology manufacturers' remits. Yeah, one for the future.
Yeah, definitely very interesting.
So it'll be great to have you back on again in the future. We talked about kind of your vision of the business in 5 years' time. I always think, especially for installation companies in this space, you guys are doing the hard yards right now. This is the time where you're dealing with the early adopters. You're dealing with figuring things out as you go through installations and having to go into homes and persuade people to go on this journey. So we just think it'd be great to have you back on in 5 years' time and talk about where the industry's at then.
Definitely, I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for being in 5 years.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.